So we are looking at a single slide today, but honestly, calling it a slide kind of feels like an undersell.
Oh, for sure. It's more like a map of, I don't know, the engine room of the universe.
That is not an exaggeration. We're looking at this technical diagram, mastering refrigeration terminology, and smack in the middle are the two words that make engineering students wake up in a cold sweat.
Enthalpy and entropy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And, usually when people tackle these, it's the high school chemistry version, right? Enthalpy is heat, entropy is a messy bedroom.
right. The simple analogies.
But looking at our source material today
Hmm.
and, thinking about who's listening, that's just not going to cut it. We need to actually master this stuff.
I agree. The diagram gives us the definitions, the formulas, the pictures. But to really master it, we have to talk about what these terms actually do in a working system, like a refrigeration cycle. We need to get why the energy moves the way it does.
Okay, so let's start with the heavyweight, left side of the diagram. The header is enthalpy, and the source gives us that simple definition right away, total heat content. But then just below it, it gets more rigorous. It says the sum of system energy.
And that little difference is so important. Total heat content is a good shorthand, but it's also a bit misleading. People hear heat and they just think temperature.
Right, what the thermometer says.
And enthalpy is so much more than that.
Well, let's dig into the text here. It defines it as the total internal energy plus the product of the system's pressure and volume. That's the classic formula, isn't it? H equals U plus PV.
Exactly. $H implies U plus PV.
I think most people get the U part, the internal energy. That's like the molecules vibrating, right? If I heat up a chunk of metal, they vibrate faster, internal energy goes up, temperature goes up. Pretty simple.
Correct. That's the kinetic energy of the molecules.
Yeah.
But that second part of the equation, that plus PV, that's where people usually get a little lost. The text specifically says the product of pressure and volume.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Why are we adding pressure and volume to our energy bill? Because, if I have a can of compressed air sitting there, it has pressure, it has volume. I don't really think of that as heat.
Think about it in a machine, though. A fridge, an engine, the fluid isn't just sitting still. It's moving, it's flowing. And to get that fluid into a cylinder or, to push it through a pipe, you have to do work. You have to push aside what's already there.
Okay, so you're literally doing work just to make space for it.
Precisely. We call it flow work. That pilot times V out term is the energy it takes to push the fluid into the system and hold its volume against whatever pressure is around it. It's energy the fluid carries with it just because it exists under pressure and takes up space.
So if I'm a little refrigerant molecule going through a compressor, my enthalpy isn't just how hot I am, my internal energy, it's also the shove energy needed to get me through that pipe.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. Enthalpy counts both the internal vibe of the molecule and the shove required to move it around. And in refrigeration, where you're constantly changing pressure and volume, that PV term becomes just incredibly important. You can't balance the energy books if you ignore the flow work.
Which brings us to the visual. Under the definition, the source has this beaker. It's got a light blue liquid thermometer sticking out. Then there's a red arrow pointing in heat absorbed and a blue arrow pointing out heat released.
This is the classic energy exchange visual. And it looks simple, but it's basically the first law of thermodynamics. Energy isn't made or destroyed, it just moves, in or out.
Okay, but here's the question. The diagram has a thermometer.
Yeah.
If I'm adding heat, that big red arrow, the thermometer has to go up, right?
Not always, and this is the mastering part of this whole deep dive. The source calls enthalpy total heat content. In a fridge, the most important work enthalpy does is usually when the thermometer isn't moving at all.
You're talking about latent heat.
Exactly, latent heat. When you boil water on the stove, or when refrigerant boils inside the evaporator, you are just pouring energy in. Enthalpy is going through the roof. That red arrow is huge, but the temperature stays flat.
Because all that energy isn't making the molecules vibrate faster, which is temperature. It's going into breaking the bonds between them.
It's like an exit fee, the price the molecules pay to change from a liquid to a gas. And that is why enthalpy is the metric we use in engineering, not just temperature. If you only looked at the thermometer, you'd miss like 90% of the energy transfer in a fridge.
I see.
Enthalpy tells the whole story. It tells you how much energy the stuff is actually holding, whether you can feel it as heat or it's hidden as latent heat.
So that's why the text says sum of system energy, and not just temperature. It's the whole bank account.
And that account goes up and down. In the diagram, heat absorbed, the red arrow, that's happening in your evaporator. That's the cooling. Heat released, the blue arrow that's in the condenser, dumping heat out the back of the fridge. We track that change in enthalpy, the delta H, to know exactly how much cooling the machine can do.
Okay, so enthalpy is the accountant. It's tracking all the energy dollars,
Yeah.
internal flow work, latent heat.
Got it. Now let's slide over to the right side of the source diagram. The purple section, entropy.
Ah, yes. The concept that's famously difficult to explain without just waving your hands.
Well, the source defines it as molecular randomness, and below that, measure of disorder. Then the text says, a property that quantifies the degree of randomness or molecular disorder in a system.
Quantifies is the key word there. It's not just a feeling like, oh, that looks messy. We can actually assign a number to how disordered a system is.
Let's use the visuals here because I think they make it way more concrete. We've got a low versus high entropy comparison.
The low entropy box, it shows these purple spheres, the molecules, in a perfect tight grid, a lattice structure.
Yep, that's a solid, or, a very, very orderly liquid. Think about the refrigerant after it's been condensed. The molecules are packed together, they're predictable, their freedom is really limited.
And limited freedom equals low entropy.
Correct. There are fewer ways you can arrange the system while keeping it looking the same. It's predictable.
Then you look at the high entropy box, the grid is gone, the purple spheres are just everywhere. And they've drawn these little motion lines, these impact bursts, showing them flying around, bouncing off the walls, hitting each other.
That's the gas phase. Vapor. Total chaos.
And they text labels as high entropy. Now, the classic explanation is just, things fall apart, things tend toward disorder.
Yeah.
But for someone who wants to understand the mechanics, why does this matter for a refrigerator? We're not just making a mess for the fun of it.
No, not at all. We are weaponizing the second law of thermodynamics. Nature wants to go from that orderly low entropy box to the chaotic high entropy box. It wants to spread out.
Okay.
But here's the connection to the first half of the page. To go from that neat grid to the chaotic gas, the molecules have to break free from the forces holding them together. They have to snap those bonds.
And breaking bonds costs money.
It costs energy. It costs enthalpy.
Ah.
Yeah.
So if I have my liquid refrigerant and I let it expand, if I let it make that jump to the high entropy state, it has to pay an energy toll.
That is the magic trick of refrigeration. When the refrigerant goes through the expansion valve, we drop the pressure. We basically give it permission to become high entropy. We open the door to that chaotic box, and the molecules rush apart.
But they need energy to do it.
They do. And if we don't supply that energy from the outside right at that moment, where do they get it?
From themselves. They have to steal it from their own energy.
Yes. They convert their own internal energy, which is temperature, into the kinetic energy they need to fly apart.
So the temperature plummets.
Drastically. That's why an expanding gas gets cold. It's trading its heat, its enthalpy, to buy its freedom, its entropy.
That is such a cool way to frame it. The high entropy picture isn't just a mess, it's an expensive state to achieve. And the refrigerant pays for that chaos with its own heat, and that makes it super cold.
And once it's super cold, then it can absorb heat from your food. It can refill its energy bank account by using the heat from inside your fridge.
So let's connect all this to the actual hardware. I think that's the final piece to really, own this terminology.
Let's do it.
Okay, that heat-absorbed arrow on the beaker. In my air conditioner, where's that?
That's your evaporator. The coil inside your house, the refrigerant is boiling, absorbing all that latent heat, and its enthalpy is shooting up.
And on the purple side of our diagram, what's happening to entropy in the evaporator?
Entropy is increasing. Big time. We're going from the low entropy liquid to the high entropy vapor. We're creating chaos to soak up heat.
Okay, then that vapor goes to the compressor.
The compressors is all about adding enthalpy. It's that PV work we talked about at the beginning. We squeeze the gas, add a ton of energy, and raise its pressure and temperature way up.
Then it goes to the condenser, the coil outside.
And that's our heat-released blue arrow. We're rejecting all that energy into the outside air.
And the entropy.
We are crushing the chaos. We're forcing those high-entropy gas molecules back into an orderly, low-entropy liquid. We're restoring order so we can use them to do it all over again.
And finally, the metering device, the expansion valve.
That's the gatekeeper. It holds back that orderly, high-pressure liquid and then releases it into the low-pressure evaporator, which starts the mad dash toward high entropy all over again.
It's just a cycle of order and chaos. You create order in the liquid just so you can exploit the natural tendency for chaos in the gas to move heat around.
That is the very essence of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
We manipulate the universe's preference for disorder to do useful work for us.
When you see it that way, it really takes the intimidation out of it. Enthalpy isn't just some scary variable dollar. It's the fuel tank. And entropy isn't some abstract philosophy. It's the trigger you pull to make the heat flow where you want it to.
And it applies to everything, not just refrigerators. A car engine creates a high entropy explosion to push a piston. A power plant uses high enthalpy steam. Once you can read these two things, the energy flow and the state of disorder, you can understand almost any thermal machine.
Before we sign off, I just want to go back to the high entropy box for a second. The source calls it a measure of disorder. And like you said, nature loves disorder.
The universe prefers the chaotic box, yes.
So in a way, everything we build,
Hmm.
every machine, every structure, even our own bodies, it's a localized fight against that picture. We are constantly burning enthalpy just to keep our own entropy low, to stay organized, to stay
Yeah.
structured.
That's absolutely true. Life and all of engineering is basically the act of holding back that universal tide of high entropy, at least for a little while.
And in the case of your refrigerator, it's holding back the tide so your food doesn't spoil.
A very worthy cause.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, next time you see enthalpy or entropy on a spec sheet, you won't just skip over it. You'll see the story of the energy and the molecules behind it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.